We're bringing to you live again from the city of Oaks, the Tar Heel State. We got a barn burner for you guys on today. We got the maestro Blair Nash, relationship expert, and we'll be having the lovely Letitia Underwood and political strategist and critic Ted Santos. There's something ominous going on in the world today, as the title will be defined as defection of affection. And the affection of affection and the impact of it on the mental health of men. In the 90s, there were movies like Waiting to Exhale that bellowed the dissatisfaction in relationships, which equal to many being in despair. However, almost 40 years later, there's a similar sentiment among younger men, as many are not getting married for a myriad of reasons, and some men's health and psyche have been greatly impacted as they are in sexless marriages. Today, we're going to look at the intersection of relationships, finance, femininity, and the impact of it on the mental health of Black men, and how we need to address this ominous topic. We will be sponsoring Brother Blair Nash books. One of his books is called Love Is Not a Beautiful Thing Until It Ain't. The second book will be Black Money, Sex, and Relationships. And the last book will be defined Illuminating the Battlefields. We're going to use these seminal topics and these books to address the parallel and the paradox of relationships in modern America and how we need to look at it also from a clinical lens. All right, guys, it's time to rock and roll. And we're going to talk about a lot of issues today. This show is not for the faint of heart. It's not necessarily politically correct, but it's grown folks talk. So if you are easily offended, please do not look at the show. But we're going to chop up some critical game in a few seconds. All right, guys. All right. So, Mr. Blair Nash, we got the guest Blair Nash. We got the lovely Letitia Underwood, and we got the strategist and the critic Ted Santos. We're here to talk about a topic of the day. I would call it Earth with Blair and Ted, and I would call the lovely Letitia Air. And of course, Seven Smalls got that fire. All right, guys, we're about to chop it up. All right, so Ted, how you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for having me on your show again, man.
All right, lovely Letitia, how are you doing, young lady?
Look, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
All right, and Brother Blair, how are you doing, sir?
Doing excellent, man.
Great.
Wedding planning, and that's pretty much everything that's going on for the next 30 days.
No doubt. Congrats to you and your fiance. All right, so Blair, let's have a critical dialogue. As a clinical therapist, we're seeing something where men are actually defecting from relationships. Relationships are actually faltering, and men are not necessarily interested in traditional marriages anymore. There's a myriad of reasons for it. Some will put it more or less on feminism, but let's talk about the intersection of relationships, community, and family, and the impact of the lack of affection on the psyche of men. So, Blair, let's tell the audience who you are, what your purpose is, and how you feel the lack of affection in relationships has led to this current demise that we're in right now.
Sure. As well, thank you for having me on the show. Greatly appreciate it. You and I have had numerous conversations where we said we were going to kind of connect. So I thank you for, kind of chiseling out some time for me.
Oh, no doubt.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, hear you perfect.
Awesome. Good stuff. So I'm not quite a clinical therapist like yourself. So I don't have the kudos to kind of, put that on myself. I'm a dating coach. I have been doing this for about 7 years. I have 3 books out. 4th will be dropping in February. Hopefully, hopefully COVID won't have anything to do with that this time.
Yes.
But essentially what I just wanted to do when I started this whole journey, I wanted to kind of help specifically women, but help people to understand how dating and how relationships actually work. Now, it seems like a very basic and, rudimentary concept, but especially for a lot of our women, it's something that they have a challenge with. I get women to come to me all the time, Blair, I'm meeting all these crazy guys, and I'm meeting these men, and they're not ready, or they want to move in with me, 4 weeks into us dating, or they just don't have themselves, or they're dating all these different women, and I try to help them understand that if you have a guy that comes to you and does that, you just kind of chalk it up to the game. It is what it is. But if the lion's share of men who come your way are asking to move in with you, trying to, you find out that they're not together, they're not about their business, then you have to actually make a concerted effort to look within self and ask, what energy am I really putting out there that's attracting those type of men? Because men and women both are very vibrational. So there is something in your spirit that is attracting bums, homosexuals, however you want to, term it. So what I did was I tried to help women to understand that the things that you're experiencing are not just by chance. They are pretty much, it's a telltale sign of the energy that you're putting out there in the universe.
Yes.
So I try to kind of pull back the curtain and allow you to see yourself as the world sees you. So that's pretty much, what I do.
Great explanation. Mrs. Letitia, give the audience a brief synopsis of what you do and your purpose as it relates to matchmaking and relationships.
Okay, so I am a certified professional matchmaker as well as a dating specialist. I focus on helping marriage-minded men find their wives, and I help those who have, both men and women who have an issue during the dating process. I help navigate them through that process. So,
okay, keep talking. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm done.
All right. So Ted, real quick, Ted, give the audience. I've had you on the show several times, but give the audience a snapshot into your query about what you see in the current trends as it relates to relationships.
Well, so you could say my journey started as at a young age with curiosity about human behavior. Mm-hmm. And I was able to take that understanding of people into the business world. So you could say I take more of a business-minded approach. So as an executive, my huge advantage to running companies was understanding human behavior, how to motivate people, and how to get the best out of them. Except where I started in studying human behavior was with relationships. And after speaking to women and lots of guys, what I was learning was that men and women wanted the same thing. It just seemed that women had no idea that men wanted the same thing they wanted. So now we had a gap. Guys pretty much knew what their role was as a man, and women didn't really understand what men needed from them. So with my understanding of changing corporate culture, which revolves around mindset, I jumped. You could say I'm transferring my skills from corporate America back into the personal arena. And just interesting, you have Blair here, because Blair and I actually started a talk show called Straight Talk, and it is a show that is made for men by men to give men a place to be able to speak openly in a way that women haven't heard before. It just first in a way that men get to actually openly talk, because we tell men to keep it, be a real man and stay in silence, and women figure out ways to silence men.
Right.
So I thought if we could create a platform where men could actually express themselves and get it all out, and then have women listen to that and engage men and ask, well, why do you feel this way? That you essentially create sort of a virtual negotiation table where men and women can come to that table and talk things out and learn things that they didn't know. And I'm comfortable to say that there are lots of women who are hearing things from men that they've never heard before, which is giving them completely new perspectives on how they pursue or address men. So that was my intent.
Great. So we got a myriad of questions that I'm going to present for Blair, Letitia, yourself, and also Ted, and we're going to intersect all of it, and we're going to have some soul soup. We're going to have some soul soup, because some men and women need soul soup. You I'm a Zennial. Blair is a Zennial. I think Letitia's a Zennial. And Ted, you're a hybrid. I think you're in the middle somewhere.
They have no classification for me. I'm everything and nothing.
So Blair, you and I and Tish are similar in age. When we look at the paradox of relationships now compared to how it was maybe in the 90s when we were teenagers growing up with movies like Waiting to Exhale, what do you guys see as something different that you didn't necessarily see 20 or 30 years ago?
Well, I'll go, but to Letitia, ladies first. Go ahead.
Let's see, 20. So what I am seeing today is Black men are highly upset with the way things have gone as far as the dynamic between man and woman, to the point where Black men are deciding that they're going to opt out on marriage or long-term relationships. And they're becoming very vocal about it. So it's not the same as, and women are not understanding. Women seem to be completely clueless about what's happening and why it's happening, and not seeing their part in it. I was one of those women. As you guys know, I was one of those women. I could not understand it. It was always, well, guys are not doing this, they're not doing that. The men are at fault. And men just took it. You know, when a woman had a complaint for all this time and she was being vocal about what the problem was on her end, men just took it. Men were not speaking up, not saying anything. At least that's not what I was seeing. But now I'm seeing men are really stepping up and saying, yeah, no, we're not the issue here. We're not going to take 100% of this. And you have some accountability in it as well.
Right. So, Letitia, when you think about the essence of femininity, and how it impacts the psyche of a man. I think a lot of women think and more or less don't understand that men will slay the dragon if they're more or less cultivated and respect and honor men. There was a time in the marriage vow where it say honor and obey, something that was actually taken out because women felt like they lost power. But let's talk about the power of femininity as it impacts the psyche of men. Let's talk about that.
Well, a lot of women were not raised to be feminine women. They were raised that femininity was weak. It was something that would cause a man to abuse you, control you, and you would have no voice in the matter. So from young girls, we're told to focus on education, focus on ourselves. You don't need a man. You can do fine without one and become independent. And so when you start hearing that and you start operating in that, you lose your femininity. Femininity today is seen as a weakness instead of empowerment.
Right. And actually, femininity is the catalyst that would jumpstart the chemistry or the alchemy between men and women. But I think a lot of women have been hoodwinked and brainwashed by, unfortunately, some of these liberal schools that tell them, you can be like a man. But what women don't understand, men love feminine women, and when the master masculine complements the master feminine, I call it heaven on earth. What's your take on that?
Well, a lot of women don't even understand what femininity is. They just think, well, if I'm looking cute or if I'm pretty, then I'm considered feminine. But femininity is not just like a dress that you take on and put on and take off. Femininity is your essence. It's a mindset. It's a belief. And it's more so believing what your purpose is, what woman's purpose is to man, and understanding that when you are engaged with a man, that he is in fact a man and you're not his equal. And there should, and just accepting that and believing that. But women today, no, they see themselves as equal to men. And so they don't feel as if they either have to operate in femininity, because there's some women who outright reject it, or they just don't really know what that looks like because they've never had it shown to them.
Be careful, they're gonna call you a pick-me. Tell them pick-me get rings.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly what. I have my idea of what a pick-me is. That's something completely different. But I'm just trying to speak to women and let them know that it is okay to be womanly. It is okay to be feminine. And that's exactly what men want. Now, you have some men who they don't quite get it. They're just going to do what they do. And I think those are the type of men that women are coming across. And they're trying to juxtapose that type of guy onto the good men that they're passing over, not giving a chance to. So it's a matter of just understanding that you have to be aware of the men that you're attracting. And that if you are tired of dealing with bad characters, you have to do something. You have to do the work so that you are no longer attracting these men, so that you can truly function in your femininity, because that is where our power comes from. When women are feminine, when women are operating there, that's when we're operating at our best. And you don't have a problem with submitting to your husband or your partner. You don't have a problem with there being in a leadership role. And I think it's just that struggle because we're raised that that's weakness. I all my life have been a girly girl. I consider myself to be very feminine, but I too was teased and ridiculed, and heck, even the boys didn't understand why I was the way that I was, and was rejected for it. And so a lot of women they're believing because they're not feminine that they have their education to fall back on, they have their degrees, they have their profession, they have their careers, and that should be enough to qualify them as a woman who's worthy of being chosen.
I want you to hold that thought because that's excellent. Ted and Blair, I want you guys to intersect and bring it together. You know, unfortunately, some women lead with their degrees as it relates to power. But what they don't understand is that men are not impressed with degrees. It's just a tangible that helps the dynamics of the relationship, but they're not necessarily impressed. Blair, I want you to talk about what you've seen as it relates to dating trends and women, you know, with degrees, and more or less using that as a more or less a foundation to draw a man.
You know, it's very interesting. You know, I don't know kind of where we went left, you know, off the rails with that, where women have used, I went to school here, I have a home out in the suburbs, I drive a C-class Benz or whatever, and they made that the dominant factor of what is a quality woman, but that's what it is. And so I just think that women have been, I mean, I tell them all the time, women have been lied to. They have been told that if you do X, Y, Z, you are going to get a competent, quality man. And so I think what's happening now is women are starting to get into their 30s, 40s, 50s, and they're realizing I've been finessed out here. I've been told that if I do this, if I go to school, everything is going to be okay. And they realize now that that's not happening. And so I think what I think, and this is just my personal opinion, I think you're seeing a lot of anger from a lot of the women because they're, like you said, they're getting into their 40s and 50s, etc. And they're like, what's wrong with the men? No. Nothing. And Letitia spoke to it. There's nothing wrong with the men out here. You know, as a whole, there's nothing wrong with black men out here. The problem is that the caliber and pedigree of the type of women that we're getting, we're not attracted to as far as building with them. So she's absolutely right.
Ted, I want you to more or less expound on the more finer points that Blair and Miss Underwood more or less addressed as it relates to power and femininity.
So something really happened. In 1991, I met a woman, and speaking of degrees, she was in law school when I met her. And we lived together 5 years. I left the country for a number of years. And when I came back, I didn't recognize the whole relationship dynamic. It was like someone dropped a bomb and everything. I couldn't believe the amount of anger. So it's like I missed it. And so I think part of it is what, Blair is saying about degrees. Now, the woman, we lived together 5 years. She has a law degree, and the law degree had no impact on the relationship. And I think just what both Blair and Letitia are saying is women were just outright lied to. Like, they were told this is the new criteria to be a valuable woman in a relationship, to be a spouse, to be a wife. And so women listened from the 70s that being feminine was weak, and being a stay-at-home mother was weak and a sign of incompetence, and wanting to take care of your children was looked down upon. So by the 90s, you had this, and you add one more element which made it really ugly, and it started in the late 80s, and that was this idea of thug love. So women believed, I have the degree, I have the job, and I'll get the house and the car. And in the meantime, I'll play around with the bad boys, get me some thug love. And then somewhere down the line, I'll go meet a guy, and no one was biting. So I think there was this anger of, there's nothing wrong with me. It must be the men who are really screwed up. And it didn't matter what man they were meeting. They had basically set themselves up for this pump and dump culture. Promiscuity. But see that a lot of people don't realize how promiscuous women had become in the 70s, late 60s, free love, 70s. The whole disco scene was literally a man says, "Hi, how you doing? What's your zodiac sign? Would you like to go home with me?" And the woman says yes or no. You guys have to understand it really, and that rode all the way until like the early 80s. That kind of culture, it died out in the early 80s, but it was literally, you go to a club, you dance with a woman, you don't even know her name, you ask if she'd like to go home with you, and she said yes or no. So promiscuity was there. I just think femininity women were not being shamed for being feminine. So the 80s had the women in their power suits, and you've got to be like a man. And I think women, even women who didn't go to college, were getting sucked up into that, I can do anything you do. So there was this battle of the sexes, the competition. And I guess if you really say it, what happened is, women engaged in a battle of the sexes and really lost. Like, they lost the things that they ultimately wanted, which was marriage and children. So there's this resentment that men did this to us. And here we are. So I think the late 80s really ushered in a whole new dynamic between men and women. And women became promiscuous in a different way and playing with the bad boys, and so things backfired, and I guess people get upset when they find out, like Blair said, you got finessed. So people don't want to say I got played, so they just keep pointing the finger at someone else.
When we were growing up, guys, you heard more romance music. The 70s, men were a lot more romantic. They more or less exemplified what love looked like. Even the songs more or less talked about the power of love. Miss Underwood, what are you seeing when you think about femininity and more or less women in dating? What are you seeing from some of our women, our sisters, as it relates to dating?
They lack femininity.
Okay.
They lack it. They don't want to embrace it, or they just have no clue what femininity actually looks like. So they're thinking, oh, I just have to look pretty.
Right. Right.
I just have to have a nice soft voice, and I'm feminine. That makes me a feminine woman. And you have some who outright reject it and say that it's weak, and you're pick me if you accept, if you have that mentality. So yeah, and I found that out starting with my matchmaking business and trying to match my clients, and then trying to give them what they desire. And you mentioned the word submission to a Black woman. And it's like you told her that you're going to kill her, something, or whatever. It's going to start a war.
Right.
So that key element is key. Mission, cooperation, whatever you want to look at it, but knowing the purpose of woman for man, and understanding that you are to be his helpmeet and not his equal as far as trying to wear the pants in a relationship.
When did you come to this the evolution of who you were in the past and more or less where you're at now? Where did you come? When did you get this come to Jesus moment, to say the least?
That's what I want to know.
I know, because you guys know I gave you a hard time to straight talk because seriously, I thought you guys were just exaggerating. I was like, man, whatever. Y'all just mean me. What? There is no way because I'm not like that. None of the women I know are like that. But so in just listening and really hearing, I know I would get frustrated after listening to the radio program and just talking to Ted on a couple of times and him trying to really get me to understand that these men are not complaining. You know, they don't hate women. They just want women to finally hear them. And then starting to build up a presence on social media. I just was able to finally see what men were talking about and how combative and difficult women can be. Because I don't have women like that in my circle. I don't really spend too much energy on being around combative, aggressive people, especially women. And just going into these singles groups, these different social media platforms, and letting women know what it is exactly men want. And telling them that, look, this is what men want, and getting all this pushback and getting to arguments and getting kicked out of groups, all because I didn't think I was being a difficult person. I just simply tell them, hey, you don't have time to wait. Men like femininity. Men want, women who are soft and kind, and oh, you're a pick me, and oh my gosh, you'll never get anybody, or it was just awful. And I was like, wait a minute. So if I'm getting this from the women, then this must be this is what the men are talking about. They're really, really being this combative and going off and thinking that their degrees. I got into a back and forth with a woman because I asked why Black people do not use a matchmaker. And she just was upset that I had the audacity to ask that question of any woman who has a professional degree. She's like, you're talking to educated women. And you're trying to treat us like we're stupid and we don't know anything. And I was like, that's not what I was doing. But what does your degree have to do with anything? Is your degree in dating, marriage, relationships? No, if it's not, then why are you bringing up your degree? And I was like, oh, okay. Oh, now I know why you guys are single. Because if this is how you're operating with men, I don't even want to be bothered with y'all. So I can only imagine how a man is going to feel. So that was the evolution. I called a couple of guys and was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, because this is what you were talking about. This is what I get it now. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I gave y'all pushback and gave y'all a difficult time. I apologize.
Well, Rebecca Lynn Pope actually highlights some of the things that you're talking about. She's a relationship expert, a matchmaker in Atlanta, Georgia. And she talked about some of the same things that you're talking about, the recalcitrant nature of some of our women and how they're so unresponsive to critical feedback. And anytime you try to give them feedback, you're doing it out of love. They interpret it as, oh, you're criticizing me, you hate Black women. And, Blair, when you think about in the 90s, Black men won't ish, Black men ain't worth a damn. They don't take care of their kids. And we know that it wasn't all Black men. It was only a percentage. The Raekwons and the Man-Mans that they fell in love with, that thug love. And now that they're damaged and more or less impacted negatively, now they want to come back to the table and negotiate. But a lot of men are not negotiating. But listen, hold tight. I think I had to bring a guest up in the background. She's a Scorpio. She's been doxxed and stuff too. So hold tight. I got security. We're gonna escort her in. Hold tight. We got Mrs. Joanne Cheek, the lovely Scorpio.
What's up, Joanne?
How are you?
What's going on, Joanne?
You look pretty tonight,
Thank you for joining us.
So, Joanne, we're talking about the paradox and how relationships have more or less faltered compared to the times when you was a kid growing up. But I want you to share what Letitia said about what she see in relationships and how some of our women are more or less antagonists as it relates to more or less trying to share basic nuances to being cooperative and having solid relationships. Because I brought two women on, because if I had all men on the panel, they would say, "Oh, you're misogynist and you don't like women." So I want to bring two women on. And Joanne, give me what you've seen from an anecdotal perspective.
Well, what I've seen, and we've talked about this before, just the overall degradation of the idea of cooperation and mutual understanding and communication, it seems to be gone. Everything is. I'm sorry, I just got a message. I apologize. Everything seems to be geared towards, I'm strong, I'm independent, I can do this, I can do that, and I don't need to have these other aspects in my relationship. It's not necessary. At least that's what I've seen. That's what I've heard from men that I've dealt with, and including my husband. When we got together, he was surprised that I was cooperative and that I cared about how he felt and cared about his day and put him before myself. For some reason, these are unusual characteristics now, and it wasn't that way when I was growing up. I as I had mentioned on before, I come from a long line of marriages on both sides of my family. My divorce was the third one in about 100 years, I think.
Oh, wow.
On either side. And I just didn't see that growing up. So seeing it in my dating life, it's just like, how much does it cost you to smile, or be nice, or be cooperative, care, and show that?
Absolutely.
That's what I.
Great.
Hey, Smalls, I'll say one thing that hurt men. And the thing that hurt men is, as women were making choices for thug love, a lot of men became resentful. And I think that resentment is still very much in the air, that they were passed over for the bad boy. So first they were passed over for the bad boy and they became resentful. And then they became resentful when the woman came back to him later after guys have run through her and has a couple of children. And then she says, I always did like you. I don't know, why didn't we get together? And I think a lot of guys just became a little bit hateful towards women for passing them over.
And rightfully so. I mean, nobody want to deal with somebody on their downcline. Like Mike Williams said back then, that they didn't want me. Now how chicks, they all on me.
Exactly.
If you didn't want me then when I was struggling, I don't want you now. So hey, I agree with that sentiment as well. Go ahead, Blair.
I was going to say real quick, and if you don't mind, I'm going to go back to a previous point that you made about Rebecca Lynn Pope. So I actually know Rebecca fairly well. She and I have had extensive conversations over the years, and she's kind of got into the game before me and was doing the matchmaking thing, like you said. And one of the things, and I'm going to paraphrase almost what she said, is that where I would bring all these different men to these women. I would bring 7, 8 guys, and the women just shot each and every one of them down. And Letitia, with you being a matchmaker, I'm sure you dealt with this. I know I've dealt with it many a times where you ask them, because for me, I have a questionnaire. It's like 65 questions of all different things that you're looking for, all different components, right? So you can't come back to me and say, hey, this is, I didn't want this, Blair, right? And so I've had instances where I brought women exactly what they said: height, religious affiliation, career aspirations, etc., and they still turn them down. And so, in speaking with Rebecca, she's mentioned to me on numerous occasions that the dominant reason why she got out of the matchmaking business was because of Black women, because they were so, and I can only use the word agitating by the notion that I'm bringing you exactly what you said you wanted, which is a good Black man. And then it's like, ooh, not that one. They're like, okay, what about this one? Ooh, not that one. So it just really wore her down. And I will say, I've been an author, I've been a dating coach, I've been a speaker, and I am a matchmaker. And I will sit here and tell you, matching Black women with quality men has been the hardest thing that I've had to do in my life, because there are so many different criteria that they're looking for. So the stuff that Rebecca's talking about is real. I've heard it from her directly, and I've also experienced it within my career as well.
And give me 1 minute, Tish. And the sad thing is, many of them more or less ask for things that they are not themselves. They ask for these high quality men, and he needs to be X, Y, Z. But imagine if a man said, "Okay, well, if you've been with X amount of men, I don't want to be with you." Imagine if a man say, "If you're over a certain weight, I don't want to deal with you." Imagine if a man said, "If your credit's not good, I don't want to deal with you." You know, the level of gross narcissism is appalling, to say the least. And some of these women that are more or less making these extraneous criteria for men, they're not even worthy of the men that they're trying to attain. So, Tish, I want you to more or less highlight what Blair was saying, okay?
So I do matchmaking for men, and my matchmaking clients are all backgrounds, all races. But I was on another podcast call, and we were discussing the same thing. And it seems that it boils down to one thing. So you have women who possibly have good qualities. Because if you're going to go to a matchmaker, let's just face it, you're going to be a woman who's paying a lot of money. So you're going to look relatively decent, have something going for yourself. And these are the hardest women, the ones who are educated, the ones who have the professional degrees, the ones who have the careers, are the business owners. They pretty much have a lot going for themselves. They got it going on. They still look relatively good. For them, it boils down to whether or not that they want to sleep with the guy. That's what it boils down to. You don't even have to ask them. You're not going to really get into it. But when they start nitpicking like that, that's pretty much what it comes down to, is that they're not sexually attracted, and they won't even admit it. And so because women don't want men to judge them that way, it's hard for them to see themselves in that manner.
You know, Letitia, from a woman's perspective, and then Ted, I want you to highlight it. Why do you feel that men need affection? Why is affection so paramount to the mental health of a man? Why do men need affection?
Well, I think men are nurturing. I don't necessarily know about affection, but men want to feel wanted, just like a woman wants to feel wanted. They want to know that you're with them for them, and not just the lifestyle or any of the tangible benefits that they can provide you.
Ted, what's your take on that? Men needing love, and I say affection because I think I see nurturing and affection as parallels to one another. But why do you think men need the ego stroked, or more or less nurtured, or more or less pushed forward?
So I'll just make this statement. Successful guys do not want their ego stroked. That's not what they're looking for. A woman's not valuable to him if that's what she's bringing to the table.
Right. So
I'm going to take that off. That's not affection. That has like zero value. The guys are successful because they didn't let someone swindle them out of their success. But if you just look at it from a neurobiological perspective, men and women secrete a neurochemical called oxytocin. Women secrete a lot. They secrete it during pregnancy, during sex, touching, talking. Women secrete a lot. Men don't secrete as much. Testosterone blocks it. So I think if women don't understand that their affection through touch, through their voice, actually supports the guy secreting oxytocin, and it makes him feel good in your presence. So women who think men don't need affection are actually missing out on establishing a bond and playing her role from a feminine perspective. And when they don't do that, if they think that you could be a good mother or good in some other way, they might marry you, except they're going to get that, I'll say, that oxytocin high from a side chick. They're going to get it somewhere else. So either you understand that men need affection, and it is through touch, it is through your voice, it is through your actions, through your caring. either you give that as their full-time woman, or they'll seek it somewhere else.
Very true. Very true. Joanne, we've talked in private several times, and what did you learn the second go around compared to the first time that you got married, as it relates to cooperation with your husband?
Well, before we got married, we had a series of very deep conversations, which is something that didn't happen with my first husband. And we discovered what our boundaries were, what our deal breakers were, unpacked the baggage, what was acceptable, what wasn't, and establishing that dynamic beforehand has actually given us a level of freedom in our marriage where there's things that we don't have to worry about, like divorce is off the table. Mm-hmm. Unless there is extreme abuse or serial cheating, divorce is not an option.
Okay.
I understand what his boundaries are. He understands what mine are, and we communicate and love each other within those. Now, we've known each other since '98, so there's not really a whole lot of boundaries, but you understand what I'm saying. I've discovered the affection piece that we're talking about. I didn't have that in my first marriage. I want to say about 6 months in, he was already in the streets. Wow. So there wasn't an opportunity for me to feel comfortable being affectionate with him. But my current husband, I am very affectionate with him. I don't yell. I usually speak to him in a peaceful voice. Try to make sure that the environment is peaceful when he, quote unquote, comes home from work. We're all working from home now. So when he comes upstairs from the basement, that, things are quiet, he's comfortable, what have you. And I see how that empowers him, how that energizes him, that I actually care about what's happened with his day, how he feels and what he thinks. And there was none of that in my first marriage. I got married when I was 22.
Joanne, you talked about how you felt that women of the modern generation, and, even though you, Ted, and you, Blair and Tisha, we're Zennials. How do you think modern women have failed young ladies now as it relates to nurturing and more or less garnering them with the information that's needed for successful marriages and relationships?
A lot of us haven't imparted that information to them, either because we don't know or we don't want to impart it because of quote unquote competition. Because a lot of us in my age group are still looking for husbands.
Wow.
A lot of us are looking for husbands. I remember you asked me, was it yesterday or day before, how many Black women I knew that were married? And I had to think about it, didn't I?
Yes.
I had to think about it for a second. There's not a lot that I know personally that are. I went through my friends list on my Facebook, and there are 6.
Wow.
Six out of how many?
I have 900 and some odd friends on my Facebook. How many are Black women? I didn't count that. I just was skipping through to see who's married. And I'm sure that I've missed a few, but there was 6. When I looked at everybody else, white, Asian, what have you, I'm still counting. I'm just being honest. I'm still counting. Right. A lot of them are married young. As you know, my husband's in the video game industry here. So we are surrounded by a lot of people who are 22, 23, 24, 25, married, bought a house already.
Right.
Are working on buying an investment property. None of them are vacationing. None of them are running the streets, clubbing, this, that, and the other thing. They're, building their futures, whatever that looks like for them. But to circle back to your question, we don't have the knowledge anymore. We've lost the knowledge due to wanting to be empowered by feminism or what have you. The feminine mystiques, if you want to call them that, aren't largely taught anymore, and those that do are ridiculed for doing so, because to be empowered, have empowered femininity. And then, like I said, there's the other piece of those that know don't want to impart the knowledge because they're out here competing too. And they know that they're competing with less as far as what makes them attractive to a man. They may be 45, a little sick, can't have more children, may have too many children already, what have you, and it says lowered their market value. And they may not admit it, but they know it. So there's not a lot that they're going to do to get in the way of what they want.
Great. Blair, I want to ask you a question. You wrote this book called Love Is Not, Love is a Beautiful Thing Until It's Not. I'm going to read this book at some point, and I'm going to expound on it in future sessions or future podcasts. But Blair, when you talk about Black love and the need for Black love, what inspired you to write this book? And you know, you guys out there that are looking at this live, I want you to go on Blair's site, and I want you guys to purchase this book. Love is a beautiful thing until it's not. Let's talk about this book, Blair, and let's talk about how it intersects with the male psyche and relationships.
Right. So when and thank you for your for purchasing and supporting what I do.
Yes,
when I wrote this book, I was starting to kind of really delve into the chasm, which is Black marriages, right? And I was trying to think of a different title and everything, and I was kind of shooting it through to my different friends. I was like, I need something that kind of encompasses what this book is about, because it's talking about the kind of the sliding and the downfall of many of the marriages in the Black community. And one of the things that we love to talk about in Black marriages is, well, if your money's right, everything should be cool. If your money's, as long as a man's got enough, money and everything is cool. And we realize, whether it be celebrities, whether it be men who are, wealthy or well off, that's not the case. That's not the case. Just having money alone is not the end all to be all. So the marriage, the idea of marriage, a marriage can crumble from a lot of different reasons. People love to say, well, if you have God in your marriage. Well, we see people who got married in the church, both of them are pastors, both of them go, and they still got divorced. So I just said, marriage, it's a beautiful thing until it ain't. Until there's a point where you just get to, like, this has ran its course. Now, we talk about it in the group that you and I are in, about the numbers, and they say, I think it's either 70 or 80% of Black women, 70% of women are the ones who file for divorce. And as Ted and I have had numerous conversations, and I've even said to him, a woman can be married to a man for 30 years, or a woman could be married to a man for 6 days and decide that she wants to not be with that man, and she can just bail out for whatever the reason is. And so that's the kind of thing that scares a lot of people in marriage is, they're like, well, wait, 80% of women file for marriage, and most one day, and other women just wake up one day and are tired of being married, and they just don't want to be married anymore. That's frightening to men. Frightening.
Very much. Yes.
So,
right.
The issues that men have, and the problems that they have with the concept of marriage as it is structured today is real. And as I tell women all the time, until we go and look at the model of marriage as it's constructed today, you're going to see dwindling numbers keep going down and down. It's not going back the other way. The numbers are going to keep going down. So, yeah.
Right. Excellent. Ted, you and I have talked too in private and in person as well. And when you talk about no-fault divorce, when you talk about paternity fraud, and Dr. Helen Smith wrote a book called Men on Strike, what do you think has been the evolution or the evolution of men more or less aborting marriages and aborting relationships, and more or less saying to hell with it?
So maybe guys it's marriage and dating. Maybe guys are really looking at it and seeing that they're getting nothing out of it. So if marriage is just for sex, and 38% of marriages for couples between 25 and 55, 38% of those are sexless, what are these guys getting? And so, you know, it would seem right to go on strike. And when you combine that with what Blair said, is over 70% of those marriages, the woman just ups and leaves, potentially can take half of your stuff, 38% not having sex. What are the benefits of getting married at all? Like, there's nothing in it for a man. And then when you peel back more layers and guys see, okay, so I have to chase the woman, pay for the dates, and I'm really not even getting anything out of that. So I'm out. Guys are just they're going overseas, or they're paying escorts. They're paying, you know, it's like, hey, if I'm not getting anything out of it, and the first date woman is saying, well, I don't owe you sex, and I really got nothing out of it, except I paid for a date, we had a conversation, it wasn't that valuable to me. I'd rather just pay the escort and get the sex, and I'm done. So why go to marriage if the whole pipeline of from hello to dating to marriage is not as valuable, and it's not presenting any return? Like, women are saying I have a degree, they're not saying what that degree means to a man. Like, what does the degree mean to me? So, you know, when I said I lived with a woman who she had a law degree, on 2 occasions, her law degree it supported me. But out of 5 years, in 2 occasions, the law degree, you know, it had no other value to me.
You know, sex in a relationship.
What you locked up. Small.
Right. So I was saying that from a clinical perspective, I feel that when men or women sabotage sex and use it to weaponize it in relationships, I think it's a form of emotional abuse. I think it's emotional abuse, and I think that when women do it, it's their own peril. Ted, do you believe that men should provide and protect women that willfully, more or less, deny them sex and sexual access?
I think everything needs to be stripped down. I mean, ideally, to go back to arranged marriages. But I think I would say that men need to redefine what their role is in a relationship, as opposed to women saying your job is to provide and protect, because that almost leaves men being like an attack trained dog. That's your job. So I think one of, you know, and I'll bring in science again. So, you know, the neuroscientists, they find that women, the reason women are three and a half times more likely to attempt three and a half times more likely than men to attempt suicide is because women have much more activity in their brain, and a lot of that activity revolves around anxiety, depression. And so women are bringing a level of anxiety to a relationship, and a lot of times that's exactly what they need protection from themselves. So if women could be open to a man being a stabilizing force from the amount of anxiety that they naturally have, and you can tell me about the outliers, but, you know, from a neuroscientific perspective, women have a lot more anxiety, and it's the reason they attempt suicide more than men. Even though men commit suicide more, women attempt it 3.5 times more than men. So I'm just saying the protection is not that, because men have built civilizations that have an enormous amount of safety for women. And so women are not walking out the door worrying about grizzly bears, tigers, and even if there's a storm, you know, for the most part, everyone's safe. So men have done a great job in creating safety. But I think women often sabotage themselves without anyone even being around them. And that's a level of protection. If women could embrace that they could appreciate men more.
Letitia, Miss Underwood, when you think about what Blair said, have you experienced any of those symptoms related to anxiety or depression because you felt like you were uncovered or more or less not protected?
Are you saying me personally? Did I ever?
Yes, ma'am. You personally, yes.
No.
Okay.
No, I don't. I have no expectation of a man providing protection. I guess I've never, because I've never had to experience outside of one traumatic experience when I was 13. Men have just automatically provided some type of protection or covering, whether they were family, friends, or just strangers. So I've never felt unprotected by Black men. I think when it comes to Black women as a whole, the protection that they're really wanting is for Black men to stand up and hold the men that they made bad decisions with, those bad decisions that they chose. They want men to stand up and tell those men that they're bad. Don't focus on the fact that you were with this guy, that you chose this guy, and now you're in a situation. No, they just want Black men to just, those are bad guys and they're no good, and men shouldn't be this. This is why women flock to people like Steve Harvey, Derrick Jackson. And I'm not knocking anyone. I'm just saying this is why women flock to those men, because they are giving them, feeding them what they need to assuage their wounds of when it comes to their bad choice. As one woman put it, she said that those men are like a Band-Aid. They're covering their wounds, and they want more men to do exactly what they're doing. And when you're not doing that, then they're saying you're not being protected.
The funny thing is that when men do step up and offer those words, they get told to mind their business. I'm grown. I have a degree. I have money. I know what I'm doing. Mind your business.
So are you saying that they're being told that by men or women?
Women are saying that to men who step up and say, hey, listen, that guy might not be that great. Or they might not want to. I'm sorry for the notifications coming in. I thought I'd turn them off. I'm sorry.
Well, they don't want men to hold them accountable. They don't want it to be looked at as them, like they're have to be part of this. They just want men to step up and tell men, you're wrong. You're wrong. You're doing this, and you shouldn't be doing this to this Black queen, this woman, and you left your children. They don't want any type of the spotlight or any of that focus on them.
No, and that's why they say that.
Yeah,
I got it. I don't need your advice. You're controlling. You're misogynistic. Get away from me.
yeah.
Well,
But
see,
then when
here's,
they
here's
go off the rails, then it's because it's not protection and provision they want. They want rescue. Like you said, they want
Right.
rescue from their bad decisions. They want rescue from their anxiety. They want rescue from not unpacking their baggage and healing before they move on to the next person. They want somebody to come and put that picture back together.
So when I speak of anxiety, you all are actually pointing out sort of an after effect, right? So if a woman has a low view of herself and the degree and the job didn't change that, one of the things she's going to be terrified of is a guy who really. I'm sorry. Are we still? So what I'm saying is that, and this is getting to the anxiety and the poor decisions. A lot of these women are choosing.
You can't stay, baby. Okay.
A
Say
lot of-
hi. You gotta go.
That's really.
You gotta go. Okay. This is my grandbaby Araya. Everybody, say hello.
He is
How you doing?
gorgeous. Hi.
A lot of women are choosing bad guys because the woman thinks that's really all she's worth. So that really points to the anxiety that a lot of women are living with, that the degree, the job, none of that has been able to protect her from the fact that her view of herself is so low that she ends up dating the guy who she thinks is lower than her, so that she never gets abandoned. It's almost like she resents him when he cheats or doesn't do what she wants. So there are too many women who are choosing quality men only because that's more of a reflection on how she sees herself.
Close the door.
Blair, I want to ask you a question. You wrote several books and you're working on the fourth title. We talked about the current trends in relationships. And before your current relationship now, what did you see in relationships as it relates to you? And how have you changed as a man as it relates to relationships with women?
Question. What I will say is this. I'll say a couple things. I'll give what I've seen as far as women. So the women that I dated in the past, I kind of allowed them to. I don't want to say get away with a lot, but I kind of was permissive in allowing them to be a certain way. So I won't really speak too much on them because I take the responsibility and accountability for that. Now, what I will say on myself is that I had to make some changes on myself. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's some feedback though.
All right. Yeah, I keep hearing it. Yeah.
Someone have a TV on or a radio, because there's something else going on in the background, and I think that's distracting.
Right. Is the radio on? Someone has a radio or TV on. Please turn it off. But Blair,
I don't.
Okay. All right. So yeah. So I was very permissive, and so what I had to do with myself is kind of look at myself, and I had to kind of take an insular look within myself and say, a lot of the reasons that you are having these failed relationships, the women are part to blame, but you are part to blame for getting in these relationships and whether it's being overwhelmed with the sexual aspect or being overwhelmed with how much fun you're having or whatever. Relationships are an ongoing thing, meaning that they are constantly changing. And I found myself always kind of going after the wrong women for all the wrong reasons. And so a lot of it had to do with me kind of stepping back and saying, you know what, you got to change some things over here. You got to change some things over here. So one of the things that I made a very clear distinction was I was not going to allow petty things to chase away women. So it used to be like, oh, she says you're going to call me at 8:00. Here it is, 8:25. What the hell? Right? And I would just cuss somebody out. She's like, I was, and I'm like, hey, you said you was going to call me at 8:00, right? And so these are the kind of things that I said to myself, I'm not going to make those a big issue, but I'm going to look at more of the caliber, and as I said earlier, the caliber and pedigree of who I'm dealing with. And once I started looking at that and really just kind of back, and I'll be honest with you, and really just kind of sitting back and just taking my time. A lot of the relationships I was in the past, I would like, yeah, let's get together, let's be together. I like you, you're beautiful, we have fun together, etc., etc. Bam, we're a couple, right? My fiance will tell you, with this relationship, I definitely took my time. I said, if it means even that you might have to, be with someone else and allow that to kind of see what happens, then so be it. If we're meant to be together, it's going to happen. And so I allowed things to just naturally happen. I wasn't in a rush. I didn't, I just wasn't. So what that did was it allowed the relationship to happen naturally. So for all the men, all the women, let it happen naturally. Don't, I know it's fun. I know she's pretty, and I know maybe you might even feel a little bit of, kind of duty because like, hey, we've been kicking it for 6 months. We've been together a year or two. If you're still having questions, take your time, address it, ask questions of her, because the reason why you have this skittishness about whatever the relationship is because there's some unanswered questions that you have. And so, again, my fiance would tell you, I asked her a myriad of questions, and I asked her the same questions again because I want to know, is there continuity in what you're saying, right? So that's one of the things I would say to people, don't be, it's like an interviewer. If you're going for a job, they might bring you back. Okay, you did a good job. We're going to bring it back again, ask them the same questions, right? Okay, we're going to ask them the same questions on the third interview. And you just kind of got to deal with it until they get a sense that you are the right person for the job. So if you understand that about a corporate position, why then, which is much more important in your personal life, would you not take the time and ask this person question after question after question? And like I said, anybody can ask my fiance; she'll tell you I did that.
Right.
So that's a tip too.
Why is cooperation, Blair, so important in relationships, but also for building Black communities and also as it relates to protecting our women? Why is cooperation so important?
Well, so being African American, Black, whatever you want to call yourself, it's already hard enough. It's a challenge, being in this skin that we're in, right? And so it is compounded exponentially when you have a woman who is working against your tribal interests. If you have a woman and you're like, hey, here's the kind of trajectory I see us on in the next 2 to 2.5 years. Here's our plan. I'm going to be doing this, and that, right? If she's like, I don't know about that, Blair, and she's kind of slamming on the brakes on the way on this journey, then you're going to have a challenge and a struggle getting to these goals. So you're not looking for a yes woman, because she may be able to kind of impart some knowledge and say, well, I'm just going to say this, and you take it for what it is. I'm with you 100%, but let me just point this out to you. That's fine. But if you have someone that is working, if you're pulling and they're pushing, it just isn't going to work. And so, every other race of people out there have their women behind their back, have their women that have their best interest at heart. Our women are the only ones, for the most part, our women are the only ones who have have a lot of kickback when it pertains to any sort of submission or compliance with doing what Black men say.
And the paradox of that, Ted, and I've said it several times in the group, submission actually is a duality, something that men and women do together in unison. When the woman submits to the authority of her husband, and when she submits to him and honor him in love and valor, then the man will automatically submit to love her, protect her, and guide her. But the problem is there's a lot of competition in relationships, as a lot of women have been trained from the egalitarian perspective, where they feel that they are equal in power to their men. And some men buy that, but most masculine men are not going to tolerate that. What's your take on that?
That was for me?
Well, Blair or Ted?
Blair, take that, Blair. Take that.
I probably said Ted, but what's that?
You expound on it, Blair. And then, Ms. Underwood, I want you to intersect it.
Okay, do me, if you could repeat the question real quick, please.
Right. So I said that that submission is a duality where men and women actually submit to one another. The word submission is a dirty word that a lot of women fear because they really don't understand it.
Right.
Men submit by loving, protecting, providing, and the greatest gift is giving their life for their woman. But women submit by honoring, obeying, and following her husband's lead. Why do you think there's so much fear as it relates to this level of intimacy in Black relationships?
Are you okay? That makes sense. Are you talking about from the man's side or from the woman's side?
Well, from both sides. I mean, more for the woman's side. More from the woman's side.
Okay.
Yes.
So I will say this, and I'll kick it over to Letitia. So I think when women think of submission, I mean, and you, like you said, we're all in the.
He's breaking up.
Blair, you froze.
No, there were some. We have to be honest about ourselves with that. There were a lot of men who were just, who were just bad dudes, right? But there were also a very large amount of men who just simply took care of the home and did whatever. And I think when women think of submission, they think of the old school mentality of, I'm gonna just be this mean guy, and I'm gonna come home, slam the door,
Right.
pound on the table. Where's my dinner? And woman, be quiet. I'm trying to watch TV. And
Right.
shut up, don't talk to me. And I think that's what they look at. And then the guy on the weekend, he goes out and does a little something, something. And so when they think of submission, they think of a woman just being quiet amidst all this emotional, sometimes even physical and verbal abuse. And that's not what submission is. So I'll turn the rest over to Letitia.
Well, let me. I'm going to have to run, but let me just say this. See, Blair, what you just said is what was sold to the Black community. That men are coming home, slamming on the table, being angry, and that is not what was happening. I mean, I think everyone knows. 1904 to the mid 60s, Black men were more likely to marry and build families. So they were being painted as being these criminals and rapists and all. And, we all know I saw some statistic. It was like 1.1 million rapes by white men and 100,000 by Black men. So it's like, and this was some statistic from a while ago. So there were just all these blatant lies that scared women. But when you ask about cooperation, if you look at, so a nation is all its people, and then that's a macrocosm. And within a nation, you have states and cities, and you have companies, and all of those different entities. A corporation, if it wants success, you have to have cooperation between your people working together for the greater good of the company. Otherwise, they fire you. And as Blair was talking about the interview, that's why they invest so much time and effort in hiring the right person so that they can have cooperation and the company is able to realize its goals and objectives. So it's the same thing in a relationship. You have a culture of a company, a culture of a country, you have a culture of a family. So if a man and woman cannot cooperate, then it becomes even more difficult to have a community that cooperates, because you can't even get two people to come together and create a family. So the children don't learn anything about cooperation. So the whole community really begins to unravel because no one understands what it means to work together. So I would say in a nutshell, cooperation is absolutely essential. And I'm not even talking about submission, just the ability to work together for the greater good of the family, and then the family being part of a community.
Well,
Absolutely.
I agree wholeheartedly, but I think in order for the cooperation to happen, a woman must submit. So I was pondering this question, and I had asked my mother, because my mother is dead set against legal marriage. And she's very feminist minded, or womanist, as you might say. So I had to ask her why she had such a hard time with the word submission, and why did she have a difficult time with marriage? Because my father was not an abusive man. My father was not an abrasive man. He's more, very quiet and meek. But she said that the problem didn't come from her father. It didn't come from my father. It came from watching her sisters. So one of her sisters were in a very abusive marriage. The husband beat her so bad, put her in a hospital, caused her to miscarry a set of twins that she was carrying. And then another of her sisters just allowed her husband to just run roughshod all over her. And while he was cheating, she was at home being this good little wife, and he was out in the streets cheating. So that right there formed her opinion that marriages were bad. And this is what a lot of women in my generation were subjected to. Even though we weren't seeing it firsthand, we weren't experiencing it, because most of us didn't have fathers in the home, but we were being told what from the perspective of our mothers or our grandmothers because of what they were seeing or something that they experienced. And I'm not trying to discount what Ted's saying, but I'm saying there are the cases of what Blair said, that submission now for us as women, for women, they're thinking that if I submit to this man, he's going to do me dirty, he's going to do me bad, and then what will I have? What does that say of me? That makes her feel like she's weak and she's a fool, and no one wants to be made to play the fool. So women have a hard time understanding this because you have too many people who are enabling this idea that all men are bad, all men are dogs.
Right.
Especially when you are seeing instances of this. But what the problem is that no one is highlighting that the fact that the women are choosing these select group of men and they're a small group. So I think that there needs to be more emphasis on not that men are bad, not that all men are bad. It's just the men that you chose, and you can't put that on all men. And I think that's the conversation that needs to be had. But I think a lot of women, unfortunately, are just rejecting that notion for whatever reason. In their head and their hearts, they believe that all men are bad.
And the paradox is that.
Sorry,
I
Small.
understand, Ted. You got to go.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to run. So
okay.
Ted, you looking good, man.
They got them guns.
Oh, thank you.
Let everybody see them guns.
Looking like a promo video for Christian Mingle or something, man. What's up?
Black Mario. Black Mario.
Yeah.
I'm getting bigger, stronger. I will be bigger.
All right, Ted. Well, listen, it was a pleasure having you. I know you got to go, but we'll finish this conversation another time, all right?
Take care. Right. You got it. Take care, everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Great.
Enjoy you.
But the paradox of what Letitia said, and Letitia, you brought some very salient points, is that intimate partner violence in most relationships is actually not only initiated by women, but women cheat just as much as men. So that old trope that men are hitting women and women, these innocent little docile creatures, is a high misnomer. Women cheat just as much or more. Right. But on top of that, they initiate intimate partner violence. So, Letitia, when you think about femininity, go ahead, brother. You said
and I was going to say, the thing that I've always thought was comical with women is they say women don't cheat. They don't cheat as much as men. I'm like, who do you think these men are going to see?
Exactly.
Who do you think that these men are going to get with? Right. So I mean, the numbers just don't add up. And like I think one of the reasons why, and even me and Ted, when we had our show, one of the things that I always told him was, I love the time period that we're in, because this is one of the first few times in Black men's history where we have not been silenced. Because typically what's happened is we've been censored and silenced into, I hate to say it, into submission by our women.
You're correct.
Because any sort of critique or speaking out about Black women, what they do, about their weight, about their attitudes, about their out of wedlock children, about the abortions, about them not being married, and on and on and on and on down the line, has been met with just damning criticism. And so the thing that's happened with social media is it's given everyone a platform, right? And so now, and women are just profoundly like, I didn't know men. Like, if you would have really listened to men, you would know this. But because, and I think it was Letitia that spoke to this, I don't know if they are really ready to hear, because I don't know if you gave the illustration of a Band-Aid being pulled off or whatever. This is kind of where a lot of Black women are right now. This is the first time that so Black men really think that this is how they truly feel right now. And so, like I said, I love the time frame we're in. I love it.
And when you present, you do it in all love and earnesty, and you're trying to share because you do love them. That's why you're telling them. But their egos are so fragile, they can't handle it, because, as Letitia said earlier, they're used to, purveyors like Derek Jackson and the Steve Harveys of the world. Like Shaka Khan said back in the 70s, tell me something good. That when somebody tell them what's needed to be the exemplar, the woman that's necessary in the relationship, they're constantly fighting, even with good women like Joanne and with good women like you, Letitia. Letitia, what would you say to young women? Because I got a myriad of questions. What would you say to young women about marriage in their 20s and the need to be fit and feminine? Why is that so important?
It's important because that's what men want. That's what good men of good quality want. So men are the choosers when it comes to marriage, and until women start asking men to marry them overall, you're just gonna have to suck it up. I mean, I don't have. So my daughter's turning 20 this year.
Right.
She's been dating a young man that she met on college campus almost 2 years now. And I had to tell her, I'm like, I was seeing her, and I'm like, you're getting a little. What is your idea? Are you guys planning on marriage or what? And she says, yes. I do see myself spending the rest of my life with him. I'm not one of those mothers that, oh, you're too young. You need to focus on I got married very young. Even though getting married at 20 scares me. But I just hope that I think that the young man that she's with is a very good match for her. I really love him. I tell her all the time that that's my future son-in-law. So I tell her I'm starting to prepare her that you need to start getting marriage minded. You can't wait until after you're married to start thinking about, oh, I'm going to get it right and do things. No, you need to start being marriage minded and focus on what he needs and get him to focus on what it is that you need, because and then I had to ask her. I said, what do you feel about submission? How do you feel that his career is going to take precedence? Because he's the career path that you're choosing, and then when you have children, you're definitely going to probably like to want to stay at home. How do you feel about his career taking precedence, and the type of career he's in? It's going to take you probably all across the country. And she said, I have to think about that, because I said, no, there's no you thinking about it. If you're going to marry this man, you have to understand that you need to trust in his leadership, trust yourself enough that you picked a quality young man and that you can follow his leadership without question. And so I asked her what type of conversations she's having with her friends, her other female friends. And she says, oh, Mom, they're all just straight feminists. Like, she was like, I kind of got sucked in a little bit. She's like, I know you're teaching me all this other stuff, but being on campus, I kind of got sucked in a little bit, because I feel like women should have a choice in things. And I'm like, no one's saying that submission means women don't have a say, women don't have a voice, women don't have a choice. But femininity is more empowering for a woman, for a young lady, than you feeling like you don't need a man. Because I'm gonna tell you, as what I'm seeing, all these young ladies who are rejecting marriage and thinking they have time to wait. I'm dealing with women who are in their 40s and 50s, and seeing my colleagues deal with women in their 50s and 60s who are having a hard time finding a husband. So waiting is not feasible. I'm not saying you have to rush into marriage, but I'm saying you should definitely be marriage minded. You should definitely choose young men who are marriage minded, and don't think that you can just date whoever willy nilly and you can turn that guy into the guy that into a good quality man. So that's what I'm hoping to get across to my daughter. Seems to be working. She hopefully she can listen to me.
Blair, I want to talk about
and if I could just
go ahead, brother.
And I'm gonna my point real quick, and I'll just expound on it by saying this. The thing that I tell women is you want to give yourself the best possible option to get the kind of man that you're looking for. So going back to your whole point about, why is it a requirement for women to be in shape, et cetera, et cetera. If you look at most quality men, not the exceptions, ladies, most quality men, and you look at the type of woman that they choose, the type of woman there's a pedigree of type of woman that they choose. And so you have to say to yourself, if I'm trying to get that type of man, I need to kind of to be in the lane of that type of woman. And that type of woman probably won't look a certain way. So that's it. I think one of the challenges that I think we have in culture and in matchmaking, and you can probably allude to this, is telling women, there's something you need to do. I can't. There's been clients I've turned down because I'm like, I can't. No. So you got to give yourself the best possible advantage to meet quality men. And if that means you got to get in the gym, that's what it means, ladies. You got to get in the gym. I know the guys at the bar and at the club tell you you're fine, but if that telling you you're fine is not going to the next level of getting quality suitors, then you have to say to yourself, do they just look at me because they think I'm sexy, or do I need to really make some changes? And that's a hard talk to have with a lot of Black women, because they tend to have this insulated shell. They don't want to hear anything about their hair, their weight, their attitude, etc.
And not it's going to the point of the attitude, because that's what I'm doing. So I try to focus on groups that are with educated women, professional women who have degrees or have a business. And these women have some of the worst attitudes. And I'm like, you have to have an attitude adjustment, because no man is going to put up with you being mouthy and combative and disrespectful. No man wants to hear when you said your mama made. No man wants to hear that. When you try to act like you're going to speak to him as if he's a man, thinking that's cute. So that's another aspect of it. I mean, all that energy, that combativeness, and trying to be on par with a man, going back and forth, some very masculine. And right. And one thing about men, they don't want, unless they're a homosexual, they're not trying to be in bed with a man. So if you're acting like a man, you're going to get rejected. And women don't see that being combative or being argumentative is masculine. Feminine women do not operate. I may have a passionate dialogue or a passionate discussion, but to be on par with a man saying and trying to emasculate him, feminine women understand that no, that's not something you do. That's not okay. And I'm sure Joanne can speak to that, because she doesn't seem like the type that's just going to be all up in her husband's face or even engaging with men in that manner. And I consider her a very feminine woman. It's just unbecoming of a lady, but they don't understand it. And no, I can't say they don't understand it. They don't want to listen. They think it's fine and nothing is wrong with them.
Well, it sounds like to me there's a power dynamic. Blair, I want you to talk about your book, Black Money, Sex, and Relationships, because it appears to be a power dynamic in the relationship. That's why there's so much discourse. I want you to talk about that, Blair, for a moment.
Yeah. So Black Money, Sex, and Relationships, that's my most recent book. And I came up with that title because I said, what are like pretty much one of the three dominant things that we have as far as African Americans? I said money, sex, relationships. And so, I have one of the things that I am privileged to do is to be able to talk with a litany of different people because of who I am, because of being in the space that I'm in. I get a chance to talk to married women. I get a chance to talk with married men. I get a chance to talk with single women. I get a chance to talk with, players to players type men, right? And so those are the three things that I started to notice that we're really having a struggle with. And so we're talking about sex and the sexual dynamic. Women kind of, when you talk about sex, it's always led with, well, why are men always, speaking about sex? And I tell women to understand, that hasn't changed since the beginning of time.
Right.
The idea that all men want is sex. What world have you been living in? That was the case back in the 70s. It was the case back in the 50s. It was the case back in 1900. Why all of a sudden do you think this is such a phenomenon? That ain't new. It's not new. So I wanted to have a conversation that just really put stuff out on the table. I wanted to talk about relationships, why they're failing, why they're struggling. As I mentioned to you when we had the conversation, when we had previous conversations, this is probably one of the first books that I really, really went hard in the paint, so much to the point that I actually had to re-edit the book and take out some stuff that was really, really kind of inflammatory. So, but one of the things that I talked about was relationships in the space that I talked about relationships in the space of how women view relationships. And there are a lot of women who are looking for relationships, a whole lot of them. But there are also a lot of women who are very disenchanted the way relationships are right now as well. And they've really just kind of given up on the whole idea of a man being honest, a man being a quality man, a man being a provider, etc. And that's why I don't want to go too far, segue too far. But that's why you see a lot of the lesbian relationships and other things that you've noticed over the past however many decades, because women are they've just become fed up with trying to deal with men. So I wanted to have a conversation about sex, about money. I talk about, one of the, because again, I go hard on women in relationships, but one of the things that I think women are absolutely correct in is that we as Black men have built no sort of infrastructure for us as a community, and especially for our women. And I give a illustration in the book. I said, you don't have to be a wealthy person to start to change this dynamic. I can get with you and let's say 6 other men, and we can set aside $20 a week. At the end of that,
true.
At the end of 6 months, we're going to have, we're going to have probably close to about $50,000, right?
Yes.
And so if you understand that it's so simple, it's a very easy concept. Now you kind of can climb into the mind of how women see things and why they get frustrated when they say that Black men haven't really built much. Yeah, you might have a nice car, you might have a nice home, but have you really built anything for Black people? And so like I said, I wanted to speak to money, I want to speak to sex, relationships, and kind of combine them all into one.
So, Letitia, as Blair talk about relationships, and Joanne, I want you to parallel to this discussion. But as Blair talk about relationships, what did you learn from your prior relationship, and what type of advice would you give to women? And then, Joanne, I want you to parallel that as well.
Okay.
All right. Well, so let's see, which relationship?
Well, your marriage relationships or your most, I don't know. You tell me.
What I learned from my previous marriage was what I wanted and and not to just juxtapose what I thought a man is supposed to be, and really figure out what a man is, what he wants. Be better at vetting and choosing men. That was the biggest thing that I've learned, was to be better at choosing men, and understanding that just because one man is one way doesn't mean the next man is going to be that way, and understanding that I have a choice in the matter. I have a choice in choosing what type of man that I want to deal with, set my standards, set my requirements, and if they don't meet them, then I don't have to deal with them. See, that way I can eliminate any problems. And I learned that very early on. I learned that in high school. So I had other than my marriage, I had pretty healthy relationships with any of the men that I've dated or been in a relationship with. Mm-hmm. But I learned at a very young age to be very careful and very mindful of the men that I allowed to court me or date me, because I've seen with other women, in my family and my friends, of choosing the wrong type of guy and what problems and how much back that will lead to.
Great. Joanne, piggyback on that real quick, and let's talk about that briefly.
Well, the first thing that I learned is that when my first marriage fell apart is that one, I needed to resolve being in rebellion against my father. That was a dynamic that I needed to deal with. Then I learned that, as Letitia said, that I needed to vet better the type of men that I was inviting into my life. And the only way that I was going to do that was getting rid of certain other baggage and misconceptions about men that I had because of choices that I made and didn't want to take responsibility for. It was all of them. Once I was able to unpack that, I had fairly healthy relationships with men. And I don't think that if I hadn't unpacked that baggage and dealt with myself, probably wouldn't have met my husband now.
Interesting. How have
I
you
don't think we would have met
assuaged?
now. I don't think.
Right.
Go ahead. What did you say?
I mean, how have you kept your relationship fresh, and what aspects of femininity that Letitia talks about have you used in your current relationship dynamic?
So I'm very affectionate with him. I don't emasculate. We have certain checks and balances that are in place, as it pertains to money and things of that nature. I don't have a problem submitting to that. We communicate well. We laugh a lot. Like, even there's been times when I know he is so mad with me, but we have to get through the day, especially now we're both working from home. We're in the house all day or what have you. And we've learned to de-escalate situations before we address them. So that has been extremely important as well.
Blair, I don't know if you traveled abroad extensively, and Letitia, I don't know if you have as well, but when you look at other cultures of women, how are those women different from America, the modern American woman, and what lessons can they learn to get a high value man?
Well,
That for me? Oh, I'm sorry.
You can go ahead, Letitia.
Well, I haven't traveled abroad, but I do have a broad spectrum of male friends. They say they have the same problems the black men are having. But as far as matchmaking goes, see, I believe that there's a difference between a high value man and a quality man. A high value man is a man that is unattainable for most majority women, unless you are raised in that culture and you truly understand that level at a socioeconomic class. You will not qualify for a high value man. However, to gain a quality man, a man of high quality, you must first learn and understand what it is that man desires. What does he want? What does he desire? And do it. And it's as simple as that. If you have to get in the gym and lose some weight, do that. If you have to switch up your hair, clothes, get a therapist first and foremost. If you have baggage, therapy is essential. Get all of that excess baggage that you are carrying around, because those type of men of quality are just not going to deal with it.
Right.
There are some things you're going to have to learn to accept. You can't allow yourself to get triggered by everything. You're just going to have to take the time to listen and learn. And once you listen and learn, and I know it sounds pick-me-ish, ladies, but the fact of the matter is you want to get married and he has to ask you. So it boils down to basically as simple as you figuring out what it is that he desires, what he wants, and meet his qualifications and his standards.
Blair, back to your book.
Hold on. I want to say goodnight.
I'm sorry.
Quick.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, dear. I'm
sorry.
No,
I need to say goodnight. I'm sorry.
Right. Don't sting nobody.
Sorry. All hell's breaking loose in the next room. It's bedtime here, so I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I want you guys to have a good night. Blair, it's a pleasure meeting you. And everybody else, I'll see you later.
No doubt. So Blair, go ahead, brother. So Blair, I was talking about the book as relates to black money, sex, and relationships. I was talking about your book, and when you think about when you talk to other men in private, what do they feel like they're lacking in relationships
Yes.
based on the power dynamic? Did you hear me? I think you froze.
Lacking in relationships, or what do they feel like lacking as men?
Right, right. In the
Yeah, I said
relationships.
my
Right.
question was, is your question what do you feel like in relationships? Well, the main thing that I hear from most men about relationships is just, is the common things. I mean, there's issues with sex. There's issues with, when I say sex, I can't get enough. I can't get enough sex. She's always got an excuse of why we can't have sex. She's, she always mouthy. She always got something slick to say and whatever. And you know, I mean, each relationship is going to be different. Like I think I'm thinking of a couple that I was coaching up until recently, and they were having they had been married 4 years and met in 2013, right? And they they were having problems in the relationship, and one of the issues that I said is, well, have you gone back and talked about, because they were talking about a lot of the hurts, a lot of the pains. He did this, she did that. And I was like, oh, that's all the stuff you're saying is very valid, very true. But have you gone back and actually talked about it and discussed it? How it made you view them differently, how it made you see them differently. And so the young lady the young lady the couple I was coaching, the young lady said to me, I am so glad that we were able to have this, this exchange, because this is the most I've heard him open up and talk in years. Right. And I said to her, you know, I've done nothing but just allowed the conversation to go smoothly and allowed it to not be censored. And so what happens with a lot of times in relationships is, and I'm speaking from the man's point of view, is that a man will start to say something and the woman will say, I don't want to hear that, or that's not true. And she'll completely shut it down.
Right.
And it's like, end of discussion, no more talking about it. And, any attempt to try to bring it up is met with just, the hand or whatever. Right. And so what I did was I said, we are going to have I said, this is going to be a kick in the stomach to you, because he's going to say some things, because he and I had an exchange privately. And I said, he's going to say some things to you that I'm sure you're probably not ready to hear. And are you ready to hear? Right. And he went off and said this, that, and the third. I'm pissed that you went through my phone. I'm sick of you and this ex that you allow to kind of hang around. I'm tired of with these kids. And I said, had you heard really those things? And she's like, no, I've heard some semblance of it, but I haven't really. And I said, well, how was I able to break through? At that point, it was like 5 weeks into our coaching. And I said, I was able to break through in 5 weeks. You all have been together for 7 years. What does that tell you? And so she kind of had to sit back and say, yeah, I'm not letting him talk. I'm not letting him verse his opinion. So really, when I do my coaching, all I try to help people do, especially for men, is allow them the freedom to talk uncensored, and the freedom to be able to say something and not think that she's going to have something to say later on this thing. I don't believe you told Blair. No. We're not going to do that. Right. You're not going to play games. You're not going to not give him no sex. You're not going to not make him his dinner. You're not going to tell him to be quiet or anything. He's going to be able to talk freely, uncensored. And to your point, I think men just want to be able to have what they're saying and the issues that they have with women be validated. If I say, hey, you're gaining a little weight, you need to kind of maybe get in the gym a little bit, right? That might be hard to hear, but is it true? Mm-hmm. And so what happens with women is they want to be all the time told everything is okay, everything is fine. And the moment a man starts to say that, yeah, I'm not getting the kind of sex I want, or I'm not getting the amount of sex I want, I'm not getting the type of sex I want. You always got something smart and slick to say, or whatever, it's shut down. And what I do is just try to help men to know that they can talk about it and be free to speak whatever they want to say. That's it.
So that is a huge issue because I come across men all the time who are shocked that I have a propensity to just sit back and just listen most of the time. I was dating a gentleman and he was like, he said we get into these hot topic conversations, and he said, what I love about you the most is that I might cut you off, or I'm going on and on and on, but you sit there and you let me speak. You hear me out, and you wait till I'm done, and and then you say what you have to say. And I didn't realize, and as I was hearing this more and more from men, I did not realize that women were incapable, that they really were not doing this, that they were just the moment a man says something that they don't like, immediately trying to just jump in and cut them off and not give him a chance to speak. And I think so after dealing with that, because I was like, well, what do you mean? You like after a while, you just learn to just deal with it. But I think that women are they're not seeing this. And this is why I like the Straight Talk group. And even though I left, but this is why I'm starting to enjoy these conversations, because women need to hear this. Women need to see this about themselves. That mirror needs to be held up to their faces. I am so glad that men are finally stepping up and speaking out, because I can only imagine having to deal with this for decades and decades and feeling like you didn't have a voice. Because as a woman, I don't think I've ever felt like I never had a voice.
Right.
And now finding out that men really did have a voice, because you're told, oh, men don't have feelings. Men don't talk about issues. Men don't have anything to say. But finding out that you guys actually do have feelings, did want to have something to say, but you had to deal with all the backlash and the drama that came with it. So.
And Letitia, I know you guys got to go in a few minutes. We got about 13 more minutes. Why would hypergamy leave a lot of women single? Tell me, why do you think hypergamy is going to leave a lot of women single? And then Blair, I want you to piggyback on that, please.
Because they don't know what they're doing. Hypergamy is simply going from one socioeconomic class to another. So you're marrying them. But a lot of women are trying to reach for stars that they'll never be able to get to that point. You're trying to practice hypergamy where you don't have any of the qualities that these men desire. So instead of just looking at it like, I don't have to marry the high value man, but if I'm in poverty, I can marry the middle class man. And if I'm in middle class, I can get an upper class man. But no, I think what I'm seeing on social media, what I'm seeing on YouTube, is what's going to have a lot of women single, because they're leaving their husbands. And I kid you not, I have so many horror stories of my male friends now telling me about how their wives have left them because they cannot provide these baller lifestyles for them. And these were men making six figures. Wow. With their wives. I have two friends whose wives left them. They're making six figures, and their wives left them because they want to live that basketball wives lifestyle. So practicing hypergamy in that way is going to leave you single, because you're now looking at good men as if they're not good enough, because you want more. You want to. What they're providing is not good enough. That's why it's going to leave them single. But if you understand that hypergamy is simply for the betterment of your children, legacy, family, and wealth, and it's not just about you, and it's not just about a lifestyle, then I think a woman will have a lot of success when it comes to practicing hypergamy, because you see it all the time. It's just a matter of how they go about doing it.
Right.
Well, I want you to piggyback on that. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, there's really not a lot to piggyback on, because she kind of, she nailed it to the wall with that. Mm-hmm. I think, and this is going to be kind of a hard pill for a lot of women to hear. I always say, and I did a book club about 3 years ago, right? And I spoke in front of a group of women, and I said, when women are younger, when they're in their early 20s, maybe kind of, late 20s, they have all the power. They just have all the power. They're beautiful. They have no children for the most part. They have no children. They've not been played and dogged and finessed by men out here. So their value is just like out of this world, right?
Right.
Men don't really have a lot of power and a lot of options because, you know, when you're 22, 23, 24, you're fresh out of college. You don't have a whole lot. You might have an apartment. You might have a nice car, but you're like, I got $60,000 in college debt, right? Or I'm trying to work my way up the corporate ladder or whatever, right? So women are kind of like up here and men are kind of here. As we start to get older, it kind of shifts like this.
Yes. Right.
And so women, you know, start to lose their value because most of men look at women and their value in their youthfulness and their appearance, right?
Yes.
There's not a woman out there that looks this, you know, and I know this is a hard thing for women sisters here, and I know they're like, there's no woman out there that looks as great at 43 that she looked at 21. It's just not even really possible. And
true.
So it starts to gain more value because now I have a car or two. Now I bought a house and sold that house, flipped it, and I'm in my dream house. Or now I'm in a great career and I'm traveling and doing whatever. So men now have all the power. And so women, what happens is, I mean, going back to your whole hypergamy component, is they're trying to take the idea that they have the capital that they had back when they were 22 and 23 and 24 and trying to make that what is happening at 40 years of age. And so one of the things that we've talked about it in the group is many times, when you have the ability as a high value man to go out and buy any type of vehicle that you want, don't bring me no 2009 Bentley. I make great money. I have the ability to basically buy whatever I want. Why do I want an 09 Bentley? Bring me the 2021 fresh off the floor with 3 miles on it. That's the one I want. And so how do you try to help women to understand that that's why you need to get the kind of quality men that you need to early? Because you don't have the ability, it's only the exceptions that have the ability to do that as you get older in life. For women to hear that, that's a slam to their ego.
Right.
Because yes, Black women do age wonderfully, but just as much as you look great at 40, there's a whole bumper crop of women who are 23, 24, and don't have children, who don't have all the baggage and everything else, who a man can go get one of those type of women. So that's where the struggle comes in. And that's where hypergamy kind of messes up women, because they still believe at 40 and 45 and 50 that just doesn't happen.
And they also don't understand, Blair, that men have a genetic predisposition for beauty, youthfulness, and chastity. It's just part of our genetic wiring. And some would try to shame you for it, but you know, those same men when they were in their 20s, they did not have that value that those women were looking for, because a woman's genetic predisposition is power, status, and maintenance. And so now these men have acquired a level of status, are more or less saying, look, it's my time now. I'm going to do me. Either you can cooperate or you can leave. I mean, because I'm the top dog now. And so you can cooperate or you can keep it moving. So Letitia, speak to that briefly. We got about 7 minutes. And then Blair, if you don't mind, I want you to talk about your current relationship. You're about to get married. Congrats. And how did this woman inspire you? But Letitia, I want you to speak on that briefly.
I'm sorry. Can you phrase that one more time for me?
Right. So I want you to speak on, decline in beauty. And then Blair, I want you to talk about how did your current fiance sway you into a lifelong commitment of marriage?
Okay. When it comes to, well, I'm a woman, so I can't, it's hard for me to look at beauty in the context of a man.
Right. Fair enough.
Because I have put in front of some of my clients what I thought were very attractive women. And they got rejected. I have one client, case in point, he said he wanted a feminine woman, one who was kind, gentle, and all this other stuff, right? And I said, okay, as far as looks, she just has to be attractive. Okay, gave him this, put them on a date, and he was like, nah, that's not gonna work for me. She's a cute girl and all, but that's not gonna work for me. And I'm like, wait. So I find her very attractive, and so I tend to fill out with my clients, with some of my friends, my male friends, about what they think beauty is. And I'll be like, what do you think about this girl? And I'll send a picture, and they're like, oh, she all right. I'm like, what you talking about? She gorgeous. So I can't measure beauty, but I do know that men prefer beautiful women over non-beautiful women. So if you are I mean, there's not much a woman can do about her face. There's not much anyone can do about their face. I mean, you can try to make yourself look relatively attractive if you have scars, if you have acne, you have discoloration. You might want to get some dermatologists to work on that. As far as our hair, some women are born with thick, luscious, glorious, beautiful hair and nice, beautiful curls. And some of us just are predisposed to have short hair, and it's really, really tightly coiled in what we call nappy, right?
Right.
So women try to do, I mean, if anything, if you're having a difficult time with your image, I would say get with someone, a friend, get some advice, hire an image consultant, ask your guy friends what they like, what they think, what men like. But I really cannot speak on it from a man's perspective. I can only go off of what I'm seeing in my business as far as beauty, and men want Beyonce's and Rihanna's of the world. So in your Kim K's and your Halle Berry's. And unfortunately, those women are far and few because pretty is not very common in the U.S. So to have so many beautiful women, they think men think all these beautiful women exist. Like there's a plethora of beautiful women.
Right.
That is not the case. Not everyone can be a Beyonce, a Halle Berry. The older men want someone like Pam Grier, and I'm just, you're not gonna that attractive. Having women being that attractive is not easy to come by. Because as women get older, as Blair said, women get older, they tend to lose. I think I look better now than 21. I'm just gonna be honest with you.
Okay, cool.
But when we get older, we do start to lose our looks. The wrinkles start to set in, the crow's feet start to set in, the sagging in places start to set in, the weight starts to set in, and it is what it is.
And
yeah,
go ahead, Blair. Go ahead.
There's a saying, and I'm back now, and I apologize. I don't know what happened. But anyway, there's a saying that Father Time is undefeated. If you understand that statement, what that essentially means is you have a limited window with which that you're going to look at your peak optimum aesthetics, right? If you understand that as a woman, that means that you have to take what you have during that small window of time when you have no children, when you haven't been dogged by men out here, and when your looks are at your premium, and take it and use it to your advantage. You cannot wait and say, well, I'm going to be 35 and 40, and then I'm going to start to go out there and look, because it's like musical chairs. At this point, all the chairs are gone, right? And so now you just kind of you like, wow, I just got to get whatever type of guy. And that's the frustration a lot of women are having, because they say, well, I messed around, and I messed around with Craig for about 3 years. Then me and Johnny mess around. Then me and Jamal. And now you look up and you're 40, and you're like, I think I'm gonna settle down. That's not how this game works. The game works. It says, hey, if you want to play around and you want to date, do it from age 18 to maybe 23, 24. That gives you a little window. You can date, mess around or whatever, make a few mistakes, and then you can kind of say, well, you know what? If I want to get one of those top tier men, one of those high value men, I really got to get busy in this game and put myself in the lane of meeting those type of men.
But the problem that we've seen with the explosion of the out of wedlock birth rates is that a lot of these girls were doing just that in their teens and early 20s, and they were end up having babies by these children. I mean, by these guys. And so now you have men who are looking back and looking at that and saying, wait. I don't want that baggage. Wait, you're by the time they're 25, 27, they have what, 3 to 4 kids? These men don't know, no man really of quality. I don't care if he's high value or not, is going to want to deal with that. So for me, I tell women it's not necessarily about dating around. It's because, or sleep around, whatever, because you're going, regardless of how hard you try to prevent pregnancy, it just may happen. So the best bet for you is to find you a nice guy that you think you can marry and have your fun times with him, and then go through that 18-24 period of dating and dating him and having fun with him, and then get married. But doing all this dating, and it's not something that I did. It's not something that I would teach my daughter, because the likelihood of her getting pregnant at that age, at so young, is too high for them to play that card.
I'll say this, and I'll make this my last comment. Going back to the whole thing of using what you got and not allowing yourself to be kind of utilized by. I know there was a comment someone made about, women don't really want the thugs and the bad boys; they want a good, respectable man. If you talk to any man out here that's been around, they will tell you that's hogwash, because the proof is there. The proof is in the pudding. Most women, as a rule, because you have to look at what women actually end up with, not what they say they want. There's what women say that they want, and then there's what they actually allow themselves to be impregnated by. And I'll make this quick point, and I'll sign off. So we have a lot of conversations on social media about the whole situation with Sierra and Russell Wilson, and the dynamic that happened with their relationship, that's happening with their relationship. And a lot of times I think that people look at the situation that Russell's able to provide and do all these nice things for Sierra, and they say, well, you're just a hater because he can go out and buy her a Benz with no problem, or he can go buy her a soccer team, as he did, with no problem. That is not the issue. The issue is that it puts a very repugnant idea into a lot of young black women's minds, that they can go around and mess with all these boys. Because Sierra got a whole, if you know anything about it, she got a whole list of D-boys and thugs that she messed with before she actually got with Russell Wilson. She had a kid by a thug and a D-boy, right? And then all of a sudden, it's, okay, I guess I've learned my lesson. Let me go find Mr. Cleanup Man, right? And to men, that's a very bad message for women to understand, for women to think that that's going to happen. It's an insult, exactly. It's an insult, and I can't express to you, that is the ultimate extreme exception. That is not the normality of how those situations usually go. The situations usually go is that she messes around, gets pregnant by a guy, and then she may meet different men around on her journey. But the majority of men don't want to be set, especially with a woman that has a child by a person like Future, because it's a constant reminder that you used to be out here just wild. You let any old random dude just, whatever in you, right? If I'm a quality man, if I'm a top tier man, why would I want to align myself with the likes of a Sierra? And so that's what the men have the problem with, not the fact that he can buy her whatever, because I think that's wonderful, but it's the fact of what sort of bad message does that inoculate into young women, that it's okay to mess around, do whatever, and then there's going to be a fall guy who comes in and sweeps you off your feet. It's a horrible message. And I'll end on that.
Blair, real quick, I know you got to go. I don't want to hold you
up.
Real quick. I asked you earlier, you're in the throes of getting married soon. I want you to share with the audience real quick, about 2 minutes, what made you fall in love with your current situation, and how was she different?
She got a fat. No, I'm just so. Well, there's a number of things. Number one, after having been out here, in the dating world for some time, let me say this. I had been in a relationship, and the relationship was just awful. It ended awful. It was just an awful relationship. So I had been single for a minute, And I had friends trying to like, hey, I know one of my friends, you know, and so they were trying. My friends were constantly trying to hook me up with someone. They were like, I got this girl. She loves tall, dark skin. Da 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 da. And then they would show me, and I'm like, that's. I'm really kind of a person. I don't really have any sort of rhyme or reason to the type of woman I like as far as sisters go. But I know it when I see it. And so I knew what the kind of and caliber of woman I was looking for. And so, as I said, friends were kind of, yeah, I got this young lady. Hey, you're gonna love her. And I'm like, she's attractive, but she doesn't do it for me when I see her. And so I met my fiance. We actually met we met in September of 2015, and I was just like, wow, she is beautiful. Right. And then I said, well, let me just kind of watch her for a minute, because every woman that I've dated over since social media has started, I actually watched them for a while. I didn't say anything. I didn't say I want to take you out. I just sat back and watched them, watch what their comments were, watch kind of pictures they put up. So a message to you ladies, guys, do watch social media. They pay attention to everything you do. They pay attention to the slick comments you make to other people. They pay attention to it all. So I just sat back and watched it for a while and just kind of said, okay, let me see how she really is. And she was always very positive, always about talking about her family and talking about dishes she made as far as, food. And I was like, oh, does she cook too? Lord. So then as we started to date, I started talking with her. I was like, okay, she's really about family. All she talks about is family, family, family. And as I said earlier in the podcast, I started asking her a litany of questions just about her path, because I want to know what you're thinking and your philosophies are, right? Because I know you as a clinical therapist. I know I call them just questions that kind of I'm gonna ask you a question over here, then I'm gonna come back and just ask another question over here to see if they really jive with one another, right? And so I did all that, and I was like, okay, she checks out. So now am I able to? Does she really have a family first perspective as opposed to a feminist perspective? And once I realized that she had that, and she didn't have, she was really about family and about loyalty and wanted to be married, I was like, this is it. This is what's up. So that's really what happened.
Well, listen, I'm grateful for this dialogue. I don't know what happened to Letitia. I don't know what happened, but
Letitia said she needs to take a nap. Letitia had to go take a nap or something. She's like, man, long ass podcast and everything.
Okay, we're gonna let you go, but listen,
I did a 7-hour podcast earlier, so
I'm sorry. Okay, well, I understand, dear. Well, listen, this is the 5th episode of the Manhood Chronicles, where we explore politics, relationships, and the impact that it has on the Black community. Blair, it was an honor to host you on my show. I want to bring you back again, hopefully to talk about this book. Want to talk about this book. And Letitia, this will not be the last time. This will not be the last time. I know you were asleep. I'm gonna call you Sleepy Smurf. But we're about to sign off. This is the 5th episode of the Manhood Chronicles, and Teddy Pendergrass said it better than I could say it. Sit back and relax and enjoy this last song as we're about to sign off. And once again, Blair and Letitia, I'm grateful, and we will do this again. Be well.
Have a good night.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right.